This is a Tabasco pepper, and today we're going to learn how to make the 150-year-old recipe for Tabasco sauce. Our first stop is Avery Island, Louisiana to meet Christian, the head of agriculture. One of the most important parts of Christian's job is actually raising the seeds that they send out all around the world for people to grow each one of their peppers. And here in Christian's hand, he's showing us how each pepper's life cycle begins. They actually start off as a flower. They're a type of flower that are self-pollinators, which mean they don't need the help from bees and other things. They mainly can just be pollinated by wind. Once they're pollinated, the flower begins to close and the pepper begins to grow. The color change is quite cool. It starts off green, then yellow, then orange, and ultimately ends up at their perfect color of red. As you can tell, these are all pretty small and they're pretty delicate. So every single chili that ends up in the hot sauce is hand-picked. There is never a machine used. Fun fact, since all these peppers here are grown for either their seeds or for testing, they're actually used in a special family batch that they age for 8 years. I guess these fresh Tabasco peppers are 10 times hotter than the final sauce, so let's try it and see how bad it burns. Christian said the best way to do this is by squeezing it between your fingers to crush up the inside and then squeezing it out onto your hand. Now let's give our breakfast a lick and see how it tastes. This is my business partner Armand. Let's see him try it as well. He had the exact same reaction as me. The first second, you're like, not bad, and then it hits you right in the back of the throat. I know, it might seem simple that this is just hot sauce, but one thing that we're going to learn together today is that there's been generations of love and care that have gone into every bottle that they've made. Christian is actually a 6th generation family member, and one of 3 family members that still works for the brand today. After all the seeds are sent around the world to grow, they get hand-picked and then mashed up with salt and sent back to Avery Island to be made into hot sauce. Let's see how that works. This is what they call mash. It is all the mashed up Tabasco peppers with salt shipped in from around the world. We use this giant hose to pump the mash into these used whiskey barrels. When making whiskey, you can only use a barrel once, but Tabasco recycles these and uses them over and over again. Each barrel gets decharred, which ensures that there is no alcohol left over. We're about to learn a very important message. Do you remember a few minutes ago when we squirted some of the juice onto our hand? Well, it started to burn, and we're now shooting this all out of a hose, and wherever it squirts on your body, you want to make sure you wipe it off quickly because it will begin to burn your skin. Make sure you say goodbye because you won't be seeing this mash again for another 3 years. Once they're sealed up with the lid on top, we're gonna cover them with salt just to add an extra layer of protection. Once the barrels get sealed up, they get organized based on which country they come from and what year they came in. Once they're placed, they will sit there for a minimum of 3 years. I don't know about you, but I struggle to plan what I'm going to do a week ahead, let alone 3 years ahead. These people are so organized. It's also crazy to me that they only move the barrels 2 at a time. This is the CEO, Harold Osborne, also known as Took, who's also a 5th generation McElhinney. He's going to show us what the inside of a barrel looks like after 3 years as compared to one from a week ago. He was nice enough to let us try to open one. It's way more difficult than I thought it was going to be, and it's also a little tricky because we're filming. But nothing can compare to this part. I'm terrified we're going to hit my hand, but we're going to be okay, and we can't be afraid. Just like we're not afraid with ice cream cakes, you got to just do it and hit it. But we may have hit it too hard. I don't think it was supposed to go all the way down to the bottom like that. But now let's watch the expert do it. Right now, you're probably so confused because one of them looks way less full than the other one, and that's because over time, it becomes concentrated. We've pretty much already tasted what the right one tastes like when we squirted the pepper on our hand. So now let's try the one on the left and see what 3 years' time does to the flavor. So we may have taken a little bit too much here, but it's pretty good. It definitely opens up your sinuses and your taste buds, that's for sure. It was actually really good, but I don't know if you could tell it was spicy. I was trying to hold it in. But let's be responsible and wash it off our hands so we don't get hurt. Now let's go figure out what happens to all that 3-year-old mash. But before we do that, we have to put on our hairnet and our beard net. Then we're off to meet Nook. He's in charge of mixing up all the sauces. Typically, he starts off by mixing together mash from a couple different countries. It's pretty much the reverse process to how we filled the barrels. And then they strain out the solids, which look like this, and leave all the liquid to be mixed together with some vinegar. They will mix together for 14 to 26 days until they eventually look like this. The lighter color one is one that has not been mixing as long, but if you look, there's a room full of these giant containers that are just constantly mixing 24/7. The finished batches stay here and wait until they're ready to be filled into bottles. They also thoroughly check each batch to make sure they're all going to taste the right way. Before we see how this all goes into a bottle, it's time to go on a field trip to get some ice cream because you know me, I can't finish a video without giving you some ice cream. I walked behind the counter and got the ice cream myself because I'm Dylan the May, the ice cream man. They had two incredible yet very surprising flavors. Since this is Tabasco, the flavors were jalapeno ice cream and chipotle ice cream. And let me tell you, they were so good. After I was done giving everyone samples and then I got to try them myself, I came back for an actual cup of it because I promised it was that good. And I was really missing ice cream. Since I have no shame, I asked them for the recipe and maybe they'll give it to me. And then hopefully someday we'll be able to make some spicy ice cream for you. Now let's find out how they produce over 700,000 bottles of hot sauce a day. It's fascinating. This very large but very small family company has been doing this for 150 years. So a lot of their machines are very old and then randomly some are really new. This process is pretty simple. The bottling house is right next door to where we just were. And they pump in all of the sauce from there and straight into these bottles. And they produce every single bottle of Tabasco hot sauce right here. So this one might end up on your table someday. Once the bottles are filled, they go into little boxes that get put into a big box. These ones are probably going to be sold in a grocery store. What's really cool is that Tabasco is sold all around the world. And they keep a list of all the countries that ordered and how much they ordered. So if you can go back, pause, let me know if your country is on that list. This is one of those really new machines I was telling you about. It actually wraps up all of these very quickly. Before we left, they wanted to show us around the island because they do so much for their local community. But as we got to this point, I started to get nervous because there wasn't a lot of water. We were kind of just on grass and I had good reason to be nervous. We ended up getting stuck. I guess this is really rare, but I always joke that because I show you guys the crazy things that happen in my life, crazier things happen every day. It's kind of like Murphy's Law. Everything that could go wrong will go wrong, because it makes good stories for you. So you get to benefit from the shortcomings of my life. But our driver Heath was really nice about everything and ended up getting the boat out eventually. And thankfully we didn't see any gators or snakes in this part. But if you made it to the end of the video, I'd love for you to let me know by commenting down below with a hot pepper.